Welcome to the first anticipatory briefing. My name is Laurent Haug. I'm going to be your host for the coming session. I'm going to dive straight into the content. We have an amazing guest with us today. She's a professor at the University of Rochester, USA. She's written more than 100 publications in magazines like Nature or Science and Cells. How many subscribers of Science and Cells do we have here? Yes, 2, 3, 4. Thank you. I didn't know that magazine. It's amazing. Her research focuses on understanding the mechanisms of longevity and genome stability. And she studies exceptionally long-lived mammals. And as you will find out, her favorite animal is the naked mole rat. She will tell you more about that. There's going to be a presentation by Vera now, and then we're going to have time for questions. You can send your questions through the app. Please, normally you should have that on your phone, or also you can raise your hand, and we'll find a way to send you a microphone. You find what she does on the GESDA radar under the human augmentation topic. She's going to tell us about living beyond 100. Please help me welcome Vera Gorbunova.
All right. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to be here today, and welcome. All right, well, people are walking in. Yes.
Thank you for being with us. Take your seat, thank you. I'm putting some water for you, Vera.
Thank you.
There's a computer and there's water. Don't go together. Be careful.
All right, thank you, everyone, for coming. And I'm going to talk about longevity and aging, and this is the topic that interests and touches everyone. And people have been fascinated with it for centuries. So this is the painting, famous Fountain of Youth. People were searching for this fountain for a very long time. And here, well, the painting shows old people entering the healing waters from one side and then emerging from the other side rejuvenated. So that's what we all would like to do. So we are also searching for the fountain of youth, but we are using science for that. And why do we need to find fountain of youth? Why is it important? The most important part is that, well, of course, we all want to be young, and that's understandable. But it's very important that with aging comes disease. And here you can see that the incidence of multiple diseases increases rapidly with age. So all the diseases that afflict people and that ultimately lead to death are actually diseases of aging, starting from cancer, cardiovascular diseases, arthritis. All of these are diseases of aging. And if we learn how to slow down aging, we can potentially prevent or delay all of these diseases. So we can prevent age-associated disease, we can extend health span and lifespan. So the concept of health span is very important, because lifespan, we all understand, is the time between birth and death. But health span is the time that we remain healthy and active. And this is, again, this is even more important because nobody wants to live for very long and be sick and bound, bedridden. Nobody wants that. We want to make people healthy for as long as possible, and this is the primary objective. So aging research can become ultimate preventative medicine, because if aging is the cause of multiple diseases, so we have to treat the cause, not the consequence, which is what currently most medical applications are doing. You treat individual diseases one by one, while aging is actually what caused them. So we would like to achieve the situation where people can stay healthy for as long as possible. Is that actually possible? Yes, it is. So here are some examples. So people who lived beyond 100, the centenarians. So this lady, Sarah Knaus, she lived to a very respectable age of 119. She remained healthy for most of this time, and she had many generations of great-great-grandchildren that she witnessed, their birth and marriages. And well, we wish everyone could do this. Another example, that was a woman, and there is a gentleman, Alex Imich, lived in New York City till the age of 111. He continued to be active. He wrote books at the age of 110. He wrote a book. He still was coming to his office until he was in his 90s. And that's ultimately what all of us want to do. So these people remain active. They live independently. They are free from cardiovascular disease, dementia, and maybe they start to experience some symptoms of aging just a year or two before their death. And that's how we would like people to age. And these individuals were very fortunate to have very lucky genetic composition. And not all of us are as lucky as them, but we want to use science in a way that all of us could benefit and live as long, those long and active lives as centenarians. Is it possible to achieve? So science has been developing very rapidly in the aging field. While if you take maybe 20 years ago, people thought that you cannot manipulate aging. Aging is just something that happens, and it cannot be changed. So one of the greatest advances happened when it was demonstrated that we can extend lifespans of model organisms in the laboratory. So on this slide, you can see a worm, nematode, C. elegans. First, people managed to extend lifespan by about twofold, threefold, and then almost tenfold. You can see a graph showing survival of these worms. On one axis, you can see percent survival over time. And if usually these worms only survive to 20 or 30 days, it was possible to genetically manipulate the worm so it survives to 100 days. So now it means aging can be manipulated. Fruit fly, a little bit more complicated than the worm, but again, using similar genetic manipulation, it was possible to extend lifespan of the fruit fly by twofold. So you imagine humans living to 200. Although when we go to a more complex organism, a mouse, that is now a lot more like us, we haven't yet succeeded making mice living twice as long as they normally do, but we could make them live about 30% as longer, which would, for a human being, mean living to, on average, 220, 130, which would be, again, quite amazing. And I must also add that some of these manipulations resulted in these laboratory organisms not just living longer, but staying healthy for much longer. So extending the health span primarily, which is very important. So science of age, all of these advancements happened within the last, I would say, 15 years or so. So there was a real explosion in this field. And this is why we anticipate that things will be changing very rapidly. So science of aging has been advancing dramatically, enabled by various technologies in the field of biology that were applied. And one of them is artificial intelligence. So these are much more recent developments where artificial intelligence was applied to develop biomarkers of aging. And if you can observe in the laboratory lifespan of fruit flies or worms that is very short and counted in days. With humans, it's more complicated, because if we want to develop interventions that improve human health span and lifespan, it just takes a very long time. So that was slowing down progress, but very recently, using biomarkers such as DNA methylation, looking at transcripts, or like how genes activated in humans, looking at different metabolites, blood chemistry, or even facial features. Using AI, it was possible to build a clock. So this way, you can take a blood sample from a person, and based on DNA in this blood sample, or even on facial features of a person, predict biological age, and you are able to tell how fast this individual is aging. So this biomarker is really very powerful, because using this, we can now develop interventions and test them. So within 6 months, you can see, did we change the rate of aging of the individuals or not? So this is really going to advance translation of the finding from model organisms, fruit flies, worms, mice, into the clinic, because we can now very rapidly assess whether human lifespan or health span has been impacted. So these are the most amazing advances that happened just within a few years. And now, well, we can measure human lifespan, health span, or aging rate. But now what do we do? What kind of interventions can we apply? And here, various approaches have been developed. Some pharmacological interventions are already being studied. And even bolder approaches, for example, gene therapies. So we already think about that. A few examples from the work in my laboratory, where we use different approaches to understand aging and longevity. And one of them is comparative biology approach, where we study animals that naturally are very long-lived and very healthy. Some of the examples are in this slide. You can see that lifespans are extremely diverse, even within mammals. So if we're talking about mammals, which are very similar to us, our genomes are very similar, but you can see differences in maximum lifespan from 2 years in a shrew to over 200 years in the bowhead whale. And then there is everything in between. And of course, there is here the naked mole rat, which is a small rodent, same size as a mouse, but it lives 10 times longer. Naked mole rats can live up to the age of 40 years, and maybe even longer, just nobody followed up them longer than 40 years. So what we are, the goal here is, once we understand the mechanisms that are different between short and long-lived species, and what makes long-lived species live as long, so once we understand the mechanisms, then we can translate them to benefit human health. And of course, here you have also seen the bat, another organism that we study, because they are exceptionally long-lived for their size. A tiny bat can live to 30 or 40 years. And they also have this unique property to tolerate diseases and various deadly viruses, so which again makes them very interesting subject for research and to, again, learning how we can translate this to humans. So here is sort of our pipeline, the workflow that we apply. So we study those exceptionally long-lived organisms. We understand molecular mechanisms that make them long-lived, and you can see examples here: whales, naked mole rats, bats. And then once we understand particular genes, we can modify them in mice, because we can easily genetically modify mice, and then see, are the mice living longer? Or in other words, can this mechanism be exported from a long-lived animal to a short-lived animal, such as mouse? And if mice are living longer, then we can now develop pharmacological strategies how to recreate the same mechanism in human patients or just in healthy individuals. Potentially, we could even go to gene therapy, but right now we are more focusing on pharmacological approaches. So I will show you a couple of examples how, this is not science fiction. We can actually apply that strategy. So we start from the naked mole rat, this amazingly long-lived animal that I already mentioned. They're not only long-lived, they're also exceptionally healthy. They don't develop cancer, or like there were maybe 5 cases of cancer reported in the literature in naked mole rats. They are very resistant to cardiovascular disease, neurodegeneration. Almost any age-related disease just doesn't happen in them. So we've been studying them for a long time. And in 2013, 10 years ago, we published this paper where we discovered one of the mechanisms responsible for the exceptional cancer resistance of the naked mole rat, where we discovered that they have a unique form of hyaluronic acid in their bodies. So hyaluronic acid, maybe you heard about it, it's often part of cosmetic creams. It is also used in some medical applications. And it's normal part of our tissues. But in naked mole rats, they have much more of it, and the structure is slightly different. It's very long chain. So what we discovered 10 years ago, that this is having this unique hyaluronic acid protects naked mole rats from cancer. And we were curious, if we now take the gene for making hyaluronic acid from naked mole rats and put it in the mouse, is it going to do any good for the mouse? Will they have less cancer? Will they maybe even live longer? So it took us about 10 years, and just recently we published the results of the next study where we analyzed these mice, and we showed that indeed they were longer lived, they had less reduced incidence of cancer, and they were generally healthier. We could take these mice, old age of 2 years, which for a mouse is very old, put them on treadmills, they were running better. They were generally much healthier, they had much less inflammation. So this is one example how we can take a mechanism from a very obscure creature such as naked mole rat and then move it to another, to mice. And then, of course, the question how we go from naked mole rat to human. And right now we are developing strategies how to do that, using pharmacological approaches, how we can increase the level of hyaluronic acid in human body, and we are also exploring potential gene therapy approaches. So it is possible, and we can benefit from those evolutionary adaptations in long-lived animals. Another example, bowhead whale. This is the largest and longest-lived mammal on the planet. They live 200 years, twice human lifespan. They are also very healthy as far as we can tell. Cancer was never found in bowhead whales, which is actually very remarkable because they are extremely large, as you can imagine. And with this large size, they have many more cells in their bodies. And every cell can potentially give rise to a tumor. So that means statistically their risk of cancer is much greater, but still they don't develop cancer. So they have some ways of staying healthy. So we've been studying bowhead whales for a number of years, and we discovered that they have very high levels of 2 proteins, which we also have, but in the bowhead whale, these proteins work a little bit differently. They have somewhat different sequence, and they're expressed at much higher level. One of them is called cold-induced RNA binding protein. It's present at 100-fold excess in the whale relative to human, and it makes it improves DNA repair in the whale. So when their DNA is damaged, they repair it much better and without errors. So then we took this protein from the whale and we put it in human cells, and human cells started to repair DNA much better. So right now of course, the next step we are generating mouse with the same gene, and we'll see if these mice now will live longer and be healthier. But you can see just an example how, again, we can take from evolutionary adaptation from this very long-lived animal and move it into human cells, and it seems to work. So there is a lot we can do to improve human health. So now the next thing I wanted to share is it's very important to understand what actually drives aging. Because aging is a process where many things go wrong, but we want to understand what is like the driver. And one such driver, and maybe the driver, is damage to our genetic material, to our DNA, which happens because of errors in DNA replication, when cells divide, when DNA has to be active. So also it happens from various external sources, such as UV light that we are exposed to, spontaneous damage. And in the course of our lives, DNA accumulates mutations, and that may be what drives aging. In addition to mutations, also the way DNA is packaged within our cells is very important, because DNA is very long, and when you need to activate particular gene, you need to find it. And if everything is tangled up, it sometimes is difficult, and that may be what is happening with aging. So when we are young, you can see DNA very neatly organized. But as cells go through rounds of DNA replication and repair, DNA becomes disorganized, and the so-called epigenetic landscape, if in the young cell it is very sharp, then it smoothens. Everything becomes kind of the same, and this is why the cell cannot function properly. And we can liken it to a sock drawer. So you can see if you fold laundry in the beginning of the week, everything is nice and neat, but as you go into this drawer and pulling socks out, like activating genes and so forth, even if you try to put it back the way it was, it's still going to be in disarray after a while. And that's what happens to our DNA as well. So how can we turn back the clock on this? How can we fold back the socks that were rearranged? So there are different approaches, and another important discovery in the aging field that was made is that we can take an old cell and we can reprogram it using reprogramming factors, or so-called Yamanaka factors. So Shinya Yamanaka received Nobel Prize several years ago when he demonstrated that you can make somatic cells, like a skin cell, and turn it into embryonic cell using those reprogramming factors. So you can kind of take the sock drawer, throw everything out, and then fold it back. So the same strategy was then later applied to aging. Because if you can turn back the time and turn adult cells into embryo cells, maybe you can do it just enough, not all the way, because we don't want to turn into embryos. We just want to rejuvenate our tissues slightly. And it was shown in mice that you can actually do that. Of course, it's somewhat dangerous, because if you go too far and cells really become embryonic, they can even turn cancerous. So we have to make it very safe. But as a proof of principle, it was shown that you can rejuvenate a mouse. So we are working on this, and then we are looking for various alternative approaches, because maybe we don't need to completely change the fate of the cell and to turn it into embryonic cell, but we could find enzymes in the cell that normally are responsible for maintaining the proper order of the DNA, and we can use those enzymes, activate them, and just tighten up the DNA where it loosened. And one of such enzymes that we study is called sirtuin-6, SIRT6. And its normal job is to keep DNA organized. But as we get older, it just cannot keep up with the job, and things start to get in disarray. So what can we do? We can apply gene therapy, and this is what we are developing now in collaboration with biotech companies. So we could deliver this enzyme using viral vectors or nanoparticles, or maybe a safe alternative is to use various pharmacological strategies to activate 36 enzyme and make it more active. So we've been looking for activators, and we found the molecule, which was actually quite amazing, that it is derived from a brown seaweed. which is very safe food item that is consumed in large quantities in countries like Japan or South Korea, which by coincidence has the longest life expectancy. And people eat a lot of seaweed. So we then found, well, if this is so safe, we can easily recommend people to eat brown seaweed. It cannot harm you. We decided to test it in mice. Is it going to change the trajectory of mouse aging? So we started giving seaweed supplement to old mice. And here is a picture of 22-month-old mice. So this is a very old age for a mouse. They start to look frail at this age. And on the right, you can see control mouse already losing hair. And on the left side is the mouse that was receiving supplement of seaweed. It looks much nicer. And not only its hair looks nicer, but also on the left, you can see the graph of the frailty score, which is very similar to geriatric frailty scoring of people, where people are asked to walk a distance, to sit down in a chair, grip strength is measured. So that's an aggregate score of frailty that we use for the mice. And you can see that mice on the supplement had much improved frailty score. So again, by giving this very safe supplement, we were able to slow aging of mice. And from here, it's very close to then doing clinical trials. So right now, we are planning for a clinical trial of the same compound in humans. So what does the future look like? So what we expect that within 5 years, we will continue seeing explosion in the area of basic research on longevity, understanding the drivers of aging at molecular level. So that is extremely important, and of course, to ensure this continued progress of basic science, the support for the science is very important because we depend on funding. These are expensive experiments, but the progress is very clear. So additionally, within fairly short time, we expect that biomarkers of aging that I was mentioning, they will be validated in humans, and first clinical trials will begin. They have already begun, but we expect that within 5 years, we will have interventions that were proven using randomized controlled clinical trial to slow down aging in humans. So that's in 5 years. Within 10 years, aging will be understood as a disease process. So we will know exactly what we need to manipulate to slow down aging. We will use cell and gene therapy. We'll also develop probably a portfolio of various pharmacological interventions that were tested in clinical trials. And anti-aging medicine will become sort of a more routine part of clinical care. So you could go to have your physical and your primary care provider would suggest a plan for you how to slow down aging. So that's 10 years. In 25 years, I believe those anti-aging strategies will be personalized. So when you go to see your doctor, they will be able to actually develop a plan, how specifically for each patient, what you need to do, which supplements you need to take, which other therapies, which may include gene therapy. And it will also be possible perhaps to not only slow down aging, but maybe even to reverse some of the effects of aging. And what we expect within 25 years, that lifespan and most importantly, health span will be extended. So people could remain active for much longer. People would not have to retire because they are just disabled and cannot work. People will work and remain active for much longer. And that age-related diseases will be either delayed or eliminated. Because again, if we can manipulate aging, we'll be able to prevent or significantly delay and compress the time when people experience those age-related morbidities, which include cancer, cardiovascular disease, and dementia. So that's the outlook. and I'll be happy to take questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Vera. Do you want to join me, have a little sip of water? Thank you so much. It's amazing. At the same time, we have discussion about bringing the retirement age 2 years longer, and people fight about that. And then you say that basically we're not going to retire at all in the future. Also, you talked a lot about extending lifespan. I had a question for you, a personal question, because I live in the mountain. I bought an old house. I'm renovating. When it comes to mice, do you have any solution to shorten their lifespan, actually?
Well, this is much easier.
Okay, yes, I have some mechanical ways to do that, but it never stops. Vera, we are here to anticipate. So the goal of this session is to tell people this is coming. We're going to have to deal with it. Can you walk us through what you anticipate being the consequences for us as people, for businesses, and also for policymakers? You know, so as a person, when you take into account that in 25 years you can go see a doctor and probably get your age reversed, what should we do about that on a personal level? How does that impact our thinking today? How do we anticipate? We're here for that.
Well, I think we should just all feel much better about the aging process and view it as something that is not inevitable, and maybe not us immediately, but our children will benefit from it, and they will stay healthy for much longer than we did. And that we could also enjoy life, maybe have different perspective, that we can, take challenges, maybe get another degree, continue our education, that we actually have more time to do things.
But in my family, there's only 3 generations, and we fight all the time. If there were 6, 7 generations, family dinners would be terrible. Second question for you: when it comes to policymakers, how do we deal with a society where potentially people live much longer? Like, what's the way to make that sustainable?
Well, I think the problem currently is that we don't have enough young people to support the growing aging population. Of course, well, we wish we had people, having more children that would kind of continue the model of the past years, where there were many more young people than old people, but this pyramid is going to be inversed, and it's very difficult to encourage people having more children. Instead, what we can offer is that old people will be much healthier, and they may not need as many resources as was in the past. So even though we'll be having many more old people, but they will be fit, productive, and I think that actually solves this big societal problem of humanity aging in general, that we'll have already in many developed countries, we have more old people, and this is coming to everywhere.
So it was actually a question we got through the app. Thank you for sending your questions. I quote, social systems are already struggling to support aging population. Are you optimistic that the systems can keep up? So you said that one factor is that people are going to be healthier. I just had an idea, maybe we should nationalize algae producers now. And then they sell all the algae to old people, and then the government makes money from that. That's if they're policymakers.
Yes, no, this is a very important point, and this is why I emphasized health span. Because that is the primary goal, that nobody wants to stay around for a very long time and be sick. So the primary objective is extending health span, and this way, again, health systems and social security systems will be able to support, because, well, people will be healthy, people will not need so much help.
Do you think that it's something that is going to be accessible to everyone?
Yes, I believe so. That's our goal, to develop interventions that are affordable and accessible. And, well, seaweed is definitely affordable. When I was talking about bowhead whale, so I mentioned this is cold-induced protein. So in the whale, they have very high levels anyway. But in humans, cold shower may, again, we haven't done a clinical trial. I'm not going to make, claims, but it is induced by brief cold exposure. Again, something very affordable, anyone can do. So there will be a suite of interventions that are fairly simple. Of course, we can also envision something more involved, like gene therapy. And initially, things are expensive, but then once the technology is mature, it becomes much more affordable. So we can see even those more complex treatments become widespread.
You actually anticipated the next question we get, which was how do we make sure that the possibility of personalized medicine increasing health span does not contribute to more social inequalities? So the point you're making is that these technologies are going to follow the normal path of technology. At the beginning, a computer was expensive. Now everybody has 5 computers. It's going to be the same. So kind of expensive early, and then you expect it to be very
yes,
affordable.
Absolutely.
What's the next limit? Where does that take us? So, okay, 100 is a lot today. Maybe it's not a lot tomorrow. Is there a limit, or do we live with no more limit to our lifespans, in your opinion?
Well, at the moment, I cannot see people living, 1,000 years. This is not yet in the realm of what science can provide. I think realistically what we can envision is people living to maybe 100 or 120 within the next 25 years and living this time very healthy. Of course, in the future, if we think beyond 25 years, well, we don't know. That becomes already science fiction. Maybe we can extend lifespan even further. But right now, we are talking about the limit. So it's very interesting that the limit to human lifespan hasn't changed within 1,000 years. You can read in the Bible that human lifespan was a set limit at 120. And so far, I showed you examples of centenarians who came very close to that, but no one really surpassed. But these people are still very, very rare. So what we can, perhaps what I would like to see is that everyone can reach this limit. And now, well, beyond 120, maybe at some point in the future it will be possible, but it's not yet on the horizon.
So when a new technology comes up, governments always try to control it, right? You think of music download, there was DRM and all that stuff. Do you think there's going to be some kind of government control, for example, to prevent bad actors from having access to these medicines? There are some people, I don't know, I can think of a few singers that I really wish they don't live 500 years. Could we control that somehow?
Well, I'm a scientist, not a politician, so it's a bit difficult for me to say. But, I would think if it becomes part of healthcare, we don't want to limit people's access to healthcare, so it will probably treat it the same way.
But I think people could argue whether this is healthcare or not, but I see what you mean. But there is still a deep philosophical question. We actually, speaking of politicians, the one thing that stops them at one point is aging, and sometimes it's a good thing. I'm reading here, we speak about the physical aspects, anything on the mental health when living longer. So do you believe that it's not only the physical health, but also the mental health?
Yes. This is a very important point, because dementia is part of aging. So when talking about health, it includes mental health, absolutely, because changes that happen in the brain, Alzheimer's disease, other forms of dementia, are the part of aging. So if we slow down aging, we would slow down those diseases as well.
There are some people asking some, questions I would probably have asked. So, these days there's this drug that kind of cuts your will to eat, like appetite cutting. So for people like me, it's like a blessing, a gift from God. There's another question like that. I can see what's behind this question. Are healthy behavior, preventive intervention like food, better food, exercise, sleep, is it still relevant when you can just eat one pill and then live longer? Thank you for the question. I would have asked it too. The question is, I think if I translate, like, can I drink how much alcohol, without care and just party, never exercise, and still live very long?
Well, I think healthy lifestyle is very important, and it's been shown again and again that the communities that practice healthy lifespan have on average longer life. But at the same time, we have examples of families of centenarians where everybody smokes and drinks and they still live to 100 because they have a very fortunate combination of genes. So once those interventions are developed, so some of them, of course, will work together with healthy lifespan, healthy lifestyle. At the same time, some of them may actually substitute them. For example, in mice and fruit flies, worms, if you limit their calorie intake, you can make them live longer. For humans, well, it's always good not to overeat, but it's not really possible for human, who has access to refrigerator to limit their calorie intake by, let's say, more than 10%. But yes, there may be a pill one could take and control for it, or there are similar other examples that can be applied. So some of these pills may actually help people and substitute for healthy behaviors, but especially in cases like calorie intake, where it's just very difficult for people to do on their own. But I think it's both. There will be some pills that just serve for that, and then healthy behaviors are always good as well.
The question is, do you leave 400 instead of 500, or like 50 instead of 500? I think that will make a difference. We have one last. I'm going to take one last question, which is quite fascinating, actually. If the science works, and we can cure cancer, cognitive and cardiovascular diseases, what will we die from? Great question. Thank you.
Yes, this is a very important question. And people have been studying that by looking at centenarians, because often, right, these people avoid getting cancer, they avoid cardiovascular disease. Well, they eventually die. And there doesn't seem to be like a single cause of death, because many systems of the body start failing. For people that live to 100, very often the cause of death may be just something as simple as pneumonia, which tells about the decline and aging of the immune system that now has difficulty dealing with infections that young people can easily fight. But if we find a way to manipulate aging, so then supposedly we'll also prevent decline of the immune system, right? So then what gives? Well, at this point, we really don't know. Maybe we just die from accidents. But again, this way you can imagine, well, human lifespan will be extended very, very significantly. But this is a difficult question to answer. I'm often asked about our naked mole rats that live to age 40. I say, what do they die of? Well, we actually don't know, because in our colony, they almost never die of old age. Well, we haven't kept the colony for 40 years. We had very few old individuals, and mostly they die because they fight with each other for dominance, because they live in like a small society of sorts. So yeah, that's a very difficult question to answer.
Maybe I had this vision of the future, or maybe, when you're 500 years old, finally someone, like a doctor, shows up to your door and they offer you cigarettes, like, please now start smoking, like, we had enough of you. It's going to be the opposite of what we have. Vera, thank you. That was fascinating. Like everyone in this house, as soon as I get out tonight, I'm going to go buy some algae, that's for sure. And I'm going to, try to live underwater like the whales. Thank you very much. That was Vera Gorbunova. Big round of applause. Thank you.